Hello, now this is preparing your images in Photoshop. This is before you get them down to the right size. I've got a number of them here, and the first thing you should always do is you should save your images. Save a copy. You should work on a copy. You should never work on your original image. So with each one of these, I'm going to do File, Save As, and I can find it, Save As. I'm going to put it in a specific place. Documents, ZU. Poster assignment, and posters are RBW, and I'm going to create a new folder, demo pictures. So I've created a new folder. I will now save a copy of this image, and I'll change the name a bit. I'm not going to spell it correctly, so I'm just going to leave it at that. It is a JPEG file, but I'm going to save it at top size, so we're going to go maximum. It's still very large. This is Qing Tombs outside of Beijing. I'm going to save a copy of this. And it won't. It would be nice if it gave me the right place. And so this is going to take me a minute as I walk through these. So if you wanted to speed by this, that'd be fine. Let's just keep going. Now I'm going to take that higher so it's full information. So I've got a lot of examples here.
Good night.
Good night.
I love you.
Love you too. Now I'm going to be doing different adjustments on each one of these, so you'll be able to see that. And okay, let me just finish. And actually, I'll just drop those in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start down here at the end. And this is the one that I promised you from the Gestalt lecture talking about closure. And so I'm going to show you some different things. Now, in this picture, all the closure is within it. This is Guanyin, and she is one of the Chinese Buddhist goddesses. There's longevity down there with the funny head, and some different ones. And this is actually a temple where she's worshipped. But what I want to show you is the fact that you can see all those arms, or within it, you can see multiple pictures depending on if you actually let people experience closure. So what we're going to do is we're going to crop the picture, and it may be interesting to you. We are seeing the picture at 50%. One of the great things that happen when you crop a picture is that it gives you these thirds lines so you can compose very well. So I can cut out all this bottom information. So I'm going to come in here somewhere, and we can go here. And so now what we have in essence, and remember Command 0, I'm doing Command 0, that'll make her full size. And what you can see is something that's a little confusing. It would be stronger if we had some more bottom, but you can tell that she definitely has a sitting position here. So this picture, however, is not very balanced because you're not sure where to look. So one of the first things you might do is crop a little bit more. And when we look at that, now if it's beyond the edge, I can do a little minus like that. And I'm going to leave her hands in there, but let me just see here. Okay, let's pull it over on this side a wee bit. There we go. And what I can do is if I get her eyes right there, right near that upper third line, and we do that, now there's more of a sense of balance. So that is putting her main eyes there on the third. And actually, in terms of closure, we can kind of see those spears, and we can see the Buddha that she's holding on her head. So you can see those additional objects. Now, the thing about this is, even for most of us psychologically, we wouldn't imagine a person with this many arms. So this is a wee bit confusing, but perhaps I can make her a bit more acceptable if I bring it down a bit more. And what's going to happen is we are not going, well, we can. Let's leave her eyes up there at the thirds, and we will come into the side, and we will come into the side. So her eyes are on the thirds. We're coming inside the poles. And now, when we see this, you don't really, because these are confusing, you don't really close on them. The closure is really in this part. That's not, sorry, I feel better if the arms are spaced more similarly, just touching them. And there we would have a fairly balanced picture, but the closure really happens all inside. Now we can imagine she has a whole body, and our brain sees the rest of how she looks. So even if we go back out to that original, let's go back in for something that might give us a little something here in terms of, there we go, in terms of hinting at, even though we don't know whose arms these are, but we can look and see here, if I cut that off right at the lotus flower at the bottom of that statue, and I can come up a little farther here, and we're still not up to her eyes. We go up to her eyes. Okay, feels a little, yeah, it's okay. It feels a little unbalanced to me. But if you look there, our brains actually say, what the heck, that's an awful lot of arms. So in a way, we sort of see this Spider-Man looking character or whatever, but our brains know that there's more arms because we've shown it. We don't necessarily know where these are coming from. In general, because of the human form, we see the praying hands, and we see her serene face, and we see the Buddha on her head here. And there, because we've cut the pieces of that Buddha off, we don't even see it at all. So in some ways, we would do better to actually leave more down here so that we can see it, because otherwise we cut it off. So we'll go this way. Let's kind of leave that hand in there. That gives us a little bit more information. If we leave that hand in there, if I go, we'll come down a little right at the edge of the lotus blossom, and I can probably pull up a little here. It places her face and her eyes in the upper third there. And if I double click it, now we have a stronger sense of what we're seeing because we're seeing more pieces of it. So the whole idea of closure is that all of those things tell us more information, even though we're not seeing it. We're seeing those hands, and since these parts are similar, whereas here where we cut it off, if you cut off on a very specific line, then people lose their sense of the rest of it. So I'm going to close this one, and I'm not going to save the changes I made, and we're not going to go there. We're going to go, let's see. I think what I'll do is I'll take you to this one, which was also in that lecture, and I was not able to manipulate it. Now, one thing that I haven't pointed out is over here on the edges in Photoshop. Whenever you change tools, this top bar changes because the top bar is related, okay? The top bar is related to that tool. So that is the move tool. This is the marquee tool, the rectangular marquee tool. So we get some information up there when we use that tool. This is the lasso tool, which then also we've got the magic wand. And what you see is this is the top bar becomes a contextual menu. So what I told you about this picture is that it's not composed very well. But what you can also see about this image is that there is a lot of dust and dirt. This came from a dirty negative. So this is actually from film, originally shot, I think, in 1993, something like that. So there are a number of ways to eliminate all these dust and specks. Okay, the first way is to use a filter, and that's under here up at the top, and it is a filter, and it's under the noise category, and we go to dust and scratches. All right, and we get this control, menu window. We can make that smaller and you can actually see that the picture is in there. But preview is clicked, so it is going to show you what happens. Now, clearly, this spot right here is tremendously obvious. It's like a major scratch, or it's a major piece of dust on there. So by using that as our goal to use this filter, we can make that go away. So if I increase, let's increase the threshold, we'll just make it 10. So we don't really see a change there. But when then I say radius, and that's the space around the pixels that it softens or makes similar, if I start increasing the radius, there we go. At 17, let me just see. I'll type in the number 10. It'll react. It's actually, let's just do it in increments of 5 maybe. So there it is, it's still there at 5. If I go to 9, interestingly enough, still there. Let's go radius 10. And it's done a good job of going away, but let's go to 11. 12. Just trying to make it completely go away. Okay, so that's clean. It's still not perfect on a lot of the other parts. And this picture is still looking good, but what it's starting to do is mush out some of the image. So if we go farther, let's say we go to 20. Okay. Hopefully what you can see there now is it has softened everything up. It has softened up those spots, and that white spot's definitely gone, but it's also made the rest of it less sharp, and we've lost sharpness. So if I bring it back down to 15, okay, we've still got some of the dust and scratches. We still have a little bit of the detail. I think the number I was at was 12. And yeah, you can see that we're getting focus back now, and we're getting more of the picture. And there's still some scratches and things, but that's probably as far acceptably that we want to go. If we pull threshold down, I hope you noticed what happened when we pulled threshold down. This has now gotten softer again. The focus is not as sharp. What threshold does is it gives us a little more latitude on sharpness. So even there, so the question might be, what if we go 20 and 20, and we have now taken out more scratches, and we still have some sharpness. Let's take it down to 17 and 20, and that is looking pretty good as a picture. Now, so if you use dust and scratches, you need to use these two things in combination, because very clearly, if we don't use threshold, it's going to soften up very quickly. And that shows you, it just blurs the whole thing. That's the radius. Even if we go 25, it's still very blurry. We go 25 on threshold, and actually we get some of it back. And that could potentially be an acceptable image, but there's still some of the dust and scratches. So if we pull it down to the radius 20 with that threshold, okay, so we're getting more of the picture, but definitely some of the scratches have gone out, and that may or may not be acceptable to you. What we can do now, though, is we say, okay, all right, so I'm going to accept this for right now. And, okay, so I'm going to accept this for right now as where I want to go. Now, one of the most interesting tools there is inside Photoshop is the clone tool. And the clone tool is a way, if you got to a point where we still had some sharpness, you could still see how cool the smoke is and everything in here. If we go to the clone tool, okay, the clone stamp tool, all right, what we're going to do is click on it, and we can use this to help some of these scratches and things go away, and we'll look particularly there on his arm. Now, this is a fairly big image, so the number of pixels is going to be pretty large. But if we take the size of this to 100, and if we make the sharpness, say 25%, the hardness, okay, then we look, and that's the area that is going to clone, and it is going to be fairly sharp. So what I can do, I can see this white spot right here. What I do is I hold down the Option key, and it becomes a target. So that is going to be the target where we are going to take the color. So I hold down that, I click on the mouse, and then when I come over here, and you saw that little plus come up, I just made the spot go away because I cloned that other color. Let's see if it's possible up here. So we got this spot in his sort of scraggly beard there, and I just made it go away. So trying to think, so right here under his neck, there's some spots, and wherever the plus is, that's where it's taking the color from. And just by cloning those areas, okay, I can smooth it out. Now, because your pictures are digital, I really don't imagine you're going to have this level of scratches and things, but there's a number of other ones that are just kind of bothering me. So the point is, you can put the target on any side, but once you establish the relationship, it will hold it. So I will now move the target to there, okay, and put it there. And essentially, I have made that spot go away. I can make that spot go away. There's one there. This is kind of a long line up here. See if it's kind of appropriate. Yeah, it's looking all right. That's not bad. Okay, so those are two ways. You could actually just start if you didn't want to lose any of your sharpness. It could even be used down here where we can kind of see the edge of the frame. Okay, let me show you sort of an obnoxiousness about the clone tool if you want to know how serious it is. So I'm going to pick as a target. I push the Option key down. I click the mouse. And what I can do is actually, I can redraw his face right here because it is completely cloning that part of the picture. I haven't found a lot of uses for this, but this is just showing you at a distance, so you can see the plus sign. This is showing you at a distance what the clone tool is doing. Okay, so if we remember, I do Command Z and I make that one go away. So I'm going to stop with this, and what I want to do is fix this picture a little bit the way I talked about it in class. I'm going to go to the cropping tool, and I said this space behind his head is not useful. You can see that one of the key points at the intersection of the thirds line is on the back of his head. And where we want this key point is here on his eye. So I can close it down this way, and we get pretty close to his eye there, okay? And that is not bad, And that's very much sort of Instagram, very square. But what I want to do is move it up and keep it a little more horizontal. So now his eye is very much on that side and looking in that direction. And we can do some adjustment because we don't want to lose the smoke, but maybe it's best if we don't have all of it. And I will bring it up from down here. And then I can bring it up actually even to the back of his head where we can experience closure, maybe, maybe not. Let's take a look at it. And there actually is a bit stronger picture, but since we've seen the whole image, we probably want a little more. So I do Command Z, I do this. And so what we can do is sort of move into this space, give him some space behind him. And then I think make it a little more narrow. And now seeing his whole back and everything. So this one actually ends up being a better picture. So he's still off of the third, but we can see it there. We change tools and we'll lose the thirds line. And there he is. So still not perfect. The picture was very much composed for what it was. But that's how you can get rid of scratches and dust marks. So you can, if it's just a few spots, you can use the clone tool. You can use the filter, which is the, the dust and scratches filter. Or you use the clone tool. So I'm not going to save those changes. Now, another thing that can happen when you're preparing your images is that your image can be underexposed. So this is a very gray day. It actually looks kind of cold, but it was very hot. This is a summer day in Beijing and a hazy day. And so we look at this and it's underexposed. Now there are a number of ways we can bring this to life more and draw it out from the back of the image. So once again, I'm leaving these images as they are. We aren't yet editing them to make a poster. I can see some potential. Remember, if we want to see it larger, you do Command 0. And then actually this is very much pushing the edges. So I'm going to go Command minus, and that makes it a little bit smaller. Okay, and so I am going to go up to Image, Adjustments, and just the simplest, the initial simplest one you can do is brightness and contrast. Now, anytime you work with these adjustments or filters and things like that, you will lose information. The picture will alter. If the picture has enough focus in it, you can probably do a lot more things with it. In fact, this picture is very much very sharply focused, but let's just look and see. So if we look, basically the foreground, the part of this temple, actually it's a tomb, the part of this tomb structure and area is very gray, and we would like it to jump a little more. So the first thing I can just do is I can make it brighter. And you can already see that we can see more. So actually, that's a lot of brightness. So I've put in the number 90, and there you can see brightness. Now the question we want to do when we make it brighter is it washed out? Actually, this picture is so dark that it doesn't really do that. But one of the things we can try is to go to contrast. And if we increase contrast, now what contrast is the distance between what is black and what is white. So if I go back to 0, okay, there you can see it's a little mushier, okay? It's flatter. If I take this number up to 75, you can see I've actually made the pagoda look a little dark again, but also I've made it pop out a little more if we look at the gray part of the wall. Now, just to show you, if I did if I did minus 75, what would happen? So then we'll take minus 50 is the farthest I can go. So it took minus 50. So there you can see that's the lowest contrast it's going to have. So everything ends up being a little gray. So let's just switch that around and try plus 50. And I'll put into the 90. That's actually pretty nice. Maybe not quite so much contrast. I can go 30. And that's popping a little more. So now I'm going to tell it I want okay. So now I've already got a more dynamic picture. If we look at history, so if I go down here in history, we can see it. Okay. So I can go old picture, new picture, old picture, new picture. So it's still not totally buzzing. So we can go back up to image, we can do adjustments, and then we can actually go to, we can go to color balance. So let's take a look at color balance. And in color balance, it's where we can make things more red, more yellow, some different things. We can work in the highlights, the shadows, the midtones. Okay, so one of those continue if I want more red. So very much because I know about Chinese history and things like that, and you can see it here, red and yellow are very important key colors. So if I increase red, the problem is it increases red everywhere. Okay, if I increase cyan, you can see there's cyan if I made it more green. So if I made it more yellow. So this is not exactly the tool that works for this. So I'm going to cancel this and not use it. And I'll go back up to image, adjustments. And now I'm going to look at hue and saturation. So in hue and saturation, I could actually change colors. But what I want to do is I want to make the colors more of that color. So I want to increase saturation. So if I'm increasing saturation, if I look once again, if the setting is master, then everything in here is going to get more color. Okay, so there it's getting more color. And actually, if I go really far, this is actually pretty close to crazy for me. But if I go really far, it gets super crazy. So you can see it's taking the pixels and it's taking them beyond where you want to go. So just looking at what happens to the whole picture tells me we want to look at saturation for specific colors. And I already mentioned those two most important colors. Okay, so the two most important colors are, let's just start with red. So that is going to be primarily this area. So now whatever is in a range of red in this image is going to receive more saturation. It is going to become more red. So actually, we're seeing a little more red up in these tiles. We're seeing this become more red. And then we're actually seeing red over here that we didn't see before. And some of these structures that were down in the trees have started to appear a little bit. But this red is going on a borderline of a very filtery look. So what I'm going to do is take this to 30 and see what we get. So that's a pretty nice red, and it's doable. And now the second important color is yellow. So even though this doesn't turn yellow, the colors we're changing are yellow. So now I'm dragging it. And now, actually, if we look down in the trees, it's starting to kick up some more, and we're getting more color. And even here, so here it's starting to pop out from the background a little bit more, and it's more colorful than it was. Something we could do is actually, if we go to the greens, we could pop up the greenness of the trees. Now the problem in this case, that's actually nice. It makes it it actually does pop up the greenness a little in the trees and makes it more colorful, but that's distracting from the pagoda itself. So that is taking interest away. So what we could choose to do here is to take away saturation. So we could reduce the color of the green and actually move it a bit more toward a gray. It's obviously there's a lot of other colors at work in there. Let me see if I pull out the cyan a little bit. Okay, so that's not affecting a lot of changes. But even another thing we could do, going back to the green, is we could make it darker. Anything that's green is going to get darker or lighter. Actually, we're seeing a lot of green, but we're not seeing a lot of changes. So let me go to the yellow again, or let's go to the red. So just so you see what lightness is, which is very light, holy moly, okay? Or it's darker, but let's just take that back to 0 in terms of reds. And so I'm going to say okay to that. So now what you can see again, going down here to history, is if we go to open, that's originally what the photo looked like when we opened it. And now we've moved it to having this much color. It's really not looking totally like a filter. And this is not the most optimal day, but even I think we're seeing the doors more here and we're seeing the different objects. Now, I'm going to go back to open and start over again with a second type of adjustment. And that second type of adjustment is here, and it is in this particular type of image. It's going to work, and that is HDR toning. Okay. So this is now, HDR is actually a system where there's generally 3 different exposures and things like that. But what it's going to give us, and almost in some ways without even making adjustments yet, we're going to get more dimensionality with it. So when I start dealing, we can play with different things. So gamma, all right, that's pretty crazy. So we'll take that back to 0. Okay, we don't want 0. Okay, I'm going to go. So there's kind of a postcard. That's super filterized, so you can have a little fun there. Okay, so we go back, and this is very clearly, let's get those back in the middle and get us back where we were. Okay, if you just mess with exposure and we increase exposure, it lightens it up quite a bit. If we adjust detail, there's we're getting a whole lot more sharpness, especially if you look here in the front. You look at sharpness. You may not get this particular control, okay? But while we're here, we're looking, we can now enhance shadows. So that's enhancing shadows a bit more. We can enhance the highlights. Oh yeah, there is a whole lot more detail here. This is a more sophisticated, but there's more dials, and you'll play with it some more. Vibrance, there's a difference between saturation and vibrance. Saturation, this is what you've seen before. It's increasing those colors up. It feels a little unrealistic up here to me, and I tend to like more realism in the photographs. And if I go here and I go for vibrance, it should make the colors pop a little bit more. We could add a little more saturation. And but the one thing about the saturation, it's really making the green yellow of the trees come out again. And don't know if I totally want to do that, but it's making the whole scene. I hope you're seeing it actually is creating dimensionality without all that extra light. Now this is actually kind of a fun thing on the curve, but what I'm going to do, let me see. So 0.122. Okay, let's even see edge glow while we're here. Okay, we're not, ooh, that's, bring it down a little bit. We could go strength, that's the strength of the edge glow. See there, you can see that it's changing the character. That looks a little more old time or something. We bring the strength down here. Wow, okay. That's got less color, but it's got more pow to it. Okay, and I'm gonna pull the radius down on the glow. And there we're getting a little more. Now the trees feel a little softer and we've got a very different picture there. But if we wanted to, we could go here to the histogram and then we could start changing some things. Okay, so that takes it and makes it very white. So we could reduce some of the exposure here. So there, that takes it back in the zone. It's making it dark, but I hope you see there's a massive amount of information and this is making it apparent. Okay, so that's darker. I don't really want to be that dark. So I'm going to pull it up. You can sort of see these lines here because I can add more grip points and that's super filtery. Okay, if you want to look totally crazy, you can make the sky gray. And actually, it'll tend to make the whole thing very gray. But you see how these doors now are very, very clear, and they weren't so much before. But if we put it back here, and if we bring this diagonal back up, and we go there, then we're back to that image that we had. So those are the kinds of adjustments. So you can take an image that's maybe a little gray, and you can make it pop a whole lot more. And if I click OK, then once again, it has registered it. And if I go back to open, there's where we started. Doesn't seem like there's that much information, very dark. We go to HDR toning, and there's the picture. And this one I'm gonna save in the new form. But actually, because I did a lot to it, I'm gonna do File, Save As. And since I'll now be in the same place, I'm going to do HDR toning. I don't know if the spelling's right, but hey. Yeah, that's where it should be. Okay. So 2020. Okay. So there we go. We've got that picture, but I'm going to I think I'll leave that open for now. And this next one is a matter of a picture I took a very long time ago. And this one is about cropping. If you look at it, it's got a lot of color. I don't really want to mess with that. It actually frustrates me a little that I didn't shoot it properly the first time. But if we look at this one, you can also see that it's from film because you can see the dust on it. And when it was scanned, there's dust and scratches. But I'm not going to worry about that at this point. But if I go back to the cropping tool. So I'm in the cropping tool and this is all related to the cropping tool. I click here and actually I'm going to use the rule of thirds to guide. And I really want to see this sign, most of it. And so I'm going to pull up a little bit. I like the circle of it. And then I'm going to come over a little bit in this direction. I'm going to pull up and let's see there. And if I re-click it, now you know exactly where to look. You really cannot help but look at that number 5. All right, so that just shows what cropping and changing the image does. And so amusement pool, bam, and the other things become background. And even one thing you could do in this regard, so let's just, what you could do is find some ways to blur the background, and we'll not worry about that at this point. I'm going to close this, and I'm not going to save the changes, so there's that guy again. All right, some other things that could happen is that you could have shot a picture. So I've actually got 3 pictures from the Iranian mosque in Dubai. And you could want to adjust them, because if you look at this picture, I hope you can see that this side is very, very straight. But this side is not. And that's because the angle, I didn't shoot it from exactly straight on. So what I want to do is find a way to straighten it. Now the first thing I'm going to do to help myself is I am going to go up to View. I'm going to say a new guide layout. And in fact, what I've got here are not, so if I just did 3 columns with 3 rows, that's actually a framework to work with the thirds. And you can see here now, you can get a pretty good sense that that's not straight. You can get a very good sense that this is straight. But if I do more columns, then I'm going to get more lines that will guide me. And so you can see, I'm going to make it 1 step smaller so you can see all the lines. And what I'm going to do is go to the rectangular marquee, and I am going to go Command A. And what this does is it selects the whole picture. Now what I can do is then go to Edit. I'm going to go to Transform, and I'm going to go to Distort. And what it does is it gives me handles on the corner. And so the arrow there, if you see the arrow, you can then pull away and I can straighten that line. Now, because I've gone beyond the edge of the frame, it is all in the picture. If I distorted somehow that way, which actually looks kind of 3D to me, I'm going to get this white space in my image. So what I've tried to do is find a way to take this line, the white line, the side of the tiles. I simply go there, and you have a couple ways. You could double click inside the frame, or you could click the check mark. If you don't like that, you take the prohibited sign, and then it puts it back to normal where it was. So then let's go to Edit, and we go back again and go Transform, Distort. And so now I'm distorting, and you could do it with any one of these handles, any one of these squares you can grab with the tool, okay? And actually, even inside this distortion, I can do Command Z, and it will send me back. So I will then pull this again, okay? And that is correct on the side, correct on that side. I've maybe pulled it away a little. I could pull this just a touch to keep it straight. Then I double click, and I can take the view, I can take the guides away. Okay, so I can clear existing guides. Whoops. Then I can go to View, and I go to Show, and I turn off guides. So I can also do Command semicolon. So I can go Command semicolon, in, out, in, out, in, out. Okay, and what you get now is you can see that that is more straight. So I will save it, and I will actually close it, and I'll do it again to the next 2 pictures. This one is a little more similar, and I think you can see I'm actually looking up the side of the building. So I'm going to do Command minus, so that brings the view down 1. I'm going to do Command A, and that gives me the marquee around the entire shape. But this one, now I'm going to do view, and I'm going to give myself a new guide layout, and that goes to default to that same one. I think that's going to be useful for me. And what I'm going to try to do is use these lines to help me line up what looks straight. So I'm going to say, okay, I am going to go to Edit, Transform, Distort. I get the handles. And now let's see what happens if I pull up this part. Okay, you can see the one thing that has happened. I've gotten closer to that line. This line is equally on the other side. But we can now come in to there. And it looks okay. If I pull that in a little bit, try to get that guy in the center. Then let's see if I can pull this out a wee bit. Pull this out a bit. And I can see some of the balance in the pieces up here. Without seeing the edges, this looks more balanced. It's off a little bit to the right. But distortion is not the best way to repair that. If I look at this line, it looks good. These two are actually similar. Very close to the same edges. And since it's man-made, there's going to be imperfections anyway. So I've used distort command semicolon. So I've used distort. And now I've straightened that one out. And now for one that's very specific, very physical, is the door. Is the door. So you may or may not see that that's level or not, but my brain, I definitely see it. And I didn't see it when I was photographing it, but if you've ever been there, it's near Al Barsha, and there's lots of cars parked there, so you can't really get the best position to take every picture. And this mosque is absolutely stunning. It is very beautiful. There's a number of things going on here in terms of the balance. If we look here, there's only one row of bricks. Over here, there's about 4 rows of bricks. And this on the ground, whether it's the shadow that throws it off or not, but that's not straight. So how do I know that? The first best way to show you is to go with View, New Guide Layout. And what I want to do here is then I want to have rows, and I'll take it up to 9. And then you can see very obviously that this is not straight. So I'm going to say okay to those guides. And then actually what we also get is thirds are still the basic structure, but there are 3 quadrants. There's a rule of thirds within each one of those. But let me go a little bit smaller. Okay, you can see here with the flowers that even that line is not straight. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is I go Command A. I could also do Command B, which is deselect. I could do select all, either way. So it's selected. I'm going to go back to edit, and I am going to transform the image, and I'm going to do that with distort. So what I first want to do is get this bottom line lined up. So I'm going to use this bottom part here as my reference point. I'm going to try to keep the side a little bit straight. So there, I'm using this line right here to get me straight. And then I want to come up here and match and pull that up a little bit so that there we can see I'm pretty much getting half flowers on all of those. If I look at the sides on the door jambs, they are looking pretty nicely straight. Okay. If I want to, what I can do is I can go into View again, and whoops. So I have to choose to accept that first. So I'm going to accept it. And okay, it's no, you can see here, it's not on because of this space right here. So there's a line there that's challenging me a little bit, but I want to go to view and I want to go new guide layout. Let's see what I get with 12 and 12. So that's going to give me more lines, and that's going to give me a line next to the door jamb. I'm going to go more. I like multiples of 3 clearly. Oh, sorry. That's not helpful. Oh, whoops, 112. There you go if you want to go insane. Let's go 15. There we go. See, now that is going to give me this line right here. And that tells me it is not perfectly straight. It also tells me that right here. So I'm going to say okay to that. Command A, image, edit, transform, distort, and there you go. Wow, those lines are better. The lines look good on the other side. I'm looking at the lines in the various spots. The line coming down the bricks, and that is acceptable. And when I look here, and I go there, that is so much straighter to me, and I can see it. Now it's the shadow that makes it a little different. But if I go to crop the picture, I could make it a touch more balanced. I could come right into that set of bricks, and let's pull it back a touch. That will make it match the other side. That puts the door here into the middle. It's a little high, so let me bring it up. I'll bring the entryway up, and that puts the top of the door into the upper third. And that is pretty stable, not totally exciting, but that's a pretty balanced image. Even though there's more sunlight on the left and it's more shadow on the right, but that is an image we could work with. So that's another one, done distortions. We've got that one. What I want to show you here, let's just go over here from the frame below. You can see it was a very sunny day. It was very nice. You can see there's some nice color. But here in number 2, I have a clearly overexposed picture. And in this clearly overexposed picture, all I have to do is image, adjustments, brightness, contrast. And all I do is bring down the brightness, and the sky gets blue. It is actually looking the other way, so the sun is working a different way. But I go minus 100. I've gotten a brighter blue. I increase contrast a little bit by an amount of 30. And that looks much more similar. That looks like it belongs with that picture. Because now I've taken it to proper exposure, and then I could do more things with it. But that's just that's a very simple adjustment on both of those. All right, so I'm going to leave it at that. I think that's a fair number of adjustments, and I'm going to make another video about it with a picture of the Louvre. So those are some ways you can make adjustments before you get to the point of actually editing your image.